The air in the abandoned City Hall station spur was different. It was heavy, carrying the weight of a century of secrets. It tasted of damp concrete, rust, and the metallic tang of the third rail, even though the power down here had been cut for 50 years. Detective Miles Corbin felt the oppressive atmosphere settle on his shoulders like a shroud. He stood on the platform, its elegant arches and dusty tilework a ghostly monument to a forgotten New York, his gaze fixed on the single subway car parked in the gloom at the end of the tunnel. This was it. Car 7R50. The ghost engine. It looked exactly like the photo on his screen back at the precinct, a hulking beast of faded green steel, its skin a chaotic tapestry of graffiti. Tags layered over tags, a history of trespassers and artists leaving their mark. But looking at it now, in the flesh, the paint felt less like decoration and more like scars. Like the train was screaming in 1,000 silent voices. "You sure about this, Miles?" His partner, Detective Isabella Rossi, stood beside him, her voice tight. The beam from her flashlight cut a nervous swat through the darkness, illuminating dancing dust motes. CSU swept the whole thing. Found nothing. The ME is stumped. Healthy 22-year-old girl, Maya Torres. Heart just stopped. The coroner's calling it sudden arrhythmic death syndrome. Basically a fancy way of saying they have no damn clue. Miles didn't answer right away. He took a slow step forward, the crunch of his boots on the gravelly platform echoing in the cavernous space. He ran a hand over his tired face, the stubble scratching his palm. He hadn't slept, not really, since the case file landed on his desk. The girl on the floor of the motorman's cab, the look on her face was frozen in his mind. It wasn't pain. It was a terror so profound it had physically broken her. "It's the same look," a cold voice whispered in his mind. The exact same look. He pushed the thought away, a familiar and unwelcome phantom from his past. He couldn't go there. Not now. "They missed something, Izzy," Miles said, his voice a low gravelly hum. "People don't just die of fright. Something in this train killed her. I want to know what it is." He approached the train, his own flashlight beam joining hers. He played the light over the graffiti. Amidst the bubble letters and stylized signatures, he saw them. Faint, scratched into the paint with a key or a rock, were the warnings. Fear the whispers. "IT sees you. Don't listen." And one, almost faded, that made the blood in his veins turn to ice. "IT knows your name." Rossi shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around her frame. "Creepy. But it's just graffiti, Miles. Kids trying to scare each other." "Maybe," Miles conceded, though he didn't believe it. He reached the open doors of the lead car. The air that drifted out was colder than the tunnel, carrying a faint, cloying sweetness, like rotting flowers and old pennies. "I'm going in." "Miles, wait. Let's call for a transit crew, get some proper lighting down here. We don't know what CSU missed." "That's what I'm here to find out," he said, cutting her off, his tone sharper than he intended. He swung himself up into the car. The inside was a desecrated cathedral of urban decay. Every surface was covered in spray paint. The plastic seats were slashed, yellow foam guts spilling out. The floor was a mosaic of broken glass, dirt, and things he didn't want to identify. The smell was stronger in here. Decay and ozone and that sick, sweet scent. He swept his light down the length of the car. It was empty. Of course it was empty. He moved cautiously toward the motorman's cab at the front, his footsteps the only sound. The door hung ajar on a single hinge. This was where they had found her. A faint chalk outline, already scuffed and faded, was the only sign she had ever been there. He stepped into the cramped space. The control panel was a mess of rusted levers and cracked dials. He placed his hand where her head had been resting. The metal was cold. unnaturally so. It seemed to suck the warmth right out of his fingers. And then he heard it. It wasn't a sound, not really. It was more like a pressure in his ears, a vibration at the lowest frequency of hearing, a whisper. It was formless, a swirl of sibilant sounds that he couldn't quite make out, but it felt intimate. Like it was being spoken not into the air, but directly into his mind. Miles froze, his heart hammering against his ribs. He swept his light around the tiny cab. Nothing. He flicked it back toward the main car. Rossi was a silhouette in the doorway, her light pointed at the ground. "You hear that?" Miles asked, his voice barely a whisper itself. "Hear what?" Rossi's voice was laced with concern. "I don't hear anything but the water dripping." Miles listened again. The dripping was there, a steady plink-plank-plonk somewhere down the tunnel. But underneath it, the whisper continued, coiling in the back of his mind. It was a siren's call, promising what? Knowledge? Peace? He couldn't tell. "It's nothing," he lied, pulling his hand back from the control panel. "Just my ears ringing." "You haven't slept in 2 days, Miles," Rossi said, her voice softening. "This case a dead girl in a spooky old train, it's getting to you. Let's go. We can come back tomorrow." He wanted to. Every survival instinct screamed at him to get out of this cold, metal tomb. But something held him. A feeling of familiarity. A sense of obligation. He ran his light over the graffiti-covered walls of the cab and his breath hitched. Tucked away in a corner, almost completely painted over by a newer, messier tag, was a small, crudely drawn bluebird. His heart stopped. He stumbled back out of the cab, his movements clumsy. What is it?" He couldn't speak. He just pointed a trembling finger at the bluebird. It was identical to the one his little sister, Sarah, used to draw on everything. On her notebooks, on her bedroom wall, on the cast she wore the summer she was 10, the summer she disappeared. She was last seen at the 59th Street station, not 2 miles from here. They never found her. No body, no witnesses, no ransom note. She just vanished. "Miles? What the hell is that?" Rossi asked, stepping into the car, her eyes following his finger. "Sarah," he choked out. "My sister. She drew that bird. All the time." The whisper in his head shifted. It coalesced, took on a new texture. For a fleeting, impossible moment, it sounded like a little girl's voice. Milo, it was her nickname for him. No one else had ever called him that. Miles staggered back, tripping over a loose piece of flooring and catching himself against a pole. The cold metal shocked him. He felt dizzy, the tunnel air suddenly too thin to breathe. "Whoa, easy." Rossi was at his side in an instant, grabbing his arm. "Miles, talk to me. It's a coincidence. It has to be." But it wasn't. He knew it with a certainty that defied all logic. Sarah had been here. In this car. The whisper came again, clearer this time. A girl's voice, laced with fear. "It's so dark, Milo, I'm scared, Sarah," he whispered to the empty, graffiti-stained air. "Miles, stop it." Ross's voice was sharp, a slap of reality. "There's no one here. You're letting your grief take over. This place is messing with your head." Suddenly, the lights in the car flickered. A weak, buzzing yellow light pulsed from the overhead fixtures, casting long, distorted shadows that writhed and danced. The ancient bulbs were caked in decades of grime, but for a split second they worked. In that flickering pulse, the graffiti on the walls seemed to warp, the colors bleeding, the letters twisting into screaming faces. The car groaned, a deep, metallic sigh that vibrated through the soles of his shoes. Then, as quickly as it started, it was over. The lights died, plunging them back into the focused beams of their flashlights. The groan faded into a silence that was deeper, more profound than before. Rossi was pale, her eyes wide. "Okay, what the hell was that? A power surge?" The lines down here are dead, Izzy. They've been dead for half a century. The sweet, metallic smell was stronger now, and Miles could finally place it. It was the smell of old blood and charged ozone, the scent of a lightning strike. He knew then. This train wasn't just haunted. It was a trap. It was a predator. It lured people in with whispers, with promises, with memories. It showed them things they desperately wanted to see, and then it fed. It fed on their hope, their grief, their despair, and finally, on their fear. Maya Torres wasn't the first. And Sarah, oh God, Sarah. He had to get out. He had to get Rossi out. It's a law. It used Maya's curiosity, and now it's using my grief. It knows Sarah is my weak spot. If we stay, it will get us too. It's hungry. We're leaving, he said, his voice firm, grabbing Ross's arm. Now. He practically dragged her out of the car and back onto the platform. He didn't stop until they were at the top of the service stairs, bursting back into the slightly less foul air of the active City Hall station. The rumble of a passing 6 train was the most comforting sound he had ever heard. They didn't speak on the ride back to the precinct. Miles stared out the window of the Crown Vic, the city lights a blur. The whisper was gone, but the feeling of it remained, an oily residue in his mind. The bluebird, the flickering lights, Sarah's voice. He couldn't tell Rossi the full truth. She had him on psych leave before the sun came up. But he couldn't let it go. This thing had his sister, or what was left of her, and it had just killed a young woman. Over the next few days, Miles descended into a private obsession. He dug through the archives, pulling dusty, forgotten case files. He found a pattern, a string of disappearances and unsolved deaths stretching back 70 years, all centered around the abandoned spurs and tunnels of the downtown lines. A transit worker in 98 vanished. A homeless man in 85 found dead of a heart attack in a tunnel, his face a mask of terror. A group of 4 college kids who went tunnel exploring in 72 and were never seen again. The official reports were all dead ends, but the unofficial notes, the whispers between cops, all mentioned the same thing, the legend of a single, graffiti-covered train car that appeared where it shouldn't be. The ghost engine. He found the train's history. Car 7R50 was part of a consist involved in a derailment in 1948. A fire. Dozens of people died trapped in the tunnels. They salvaged most of the cars, but 7R50 was deemed too damaged. It was shunted onto a decommissioned track and forgotten. Forgotten by everyone except the thing that had woken up inside it that day, born from the fire and the pain and the fear. Rossi watched him with growing concern. She saw the dark circles under his eyes, the way he jumped at sudden noises, the way he muttered to himself when he thought no one was listening. You need to take a step back, Miles, she told him one evening, cornering him by the coffee machine. It was late, and the precinct was nearly empty. This isn't a case anymore. It's a vendetta. You think that train is responsible for Sarah. I get it. I do. But you're chasing a ghost. It's not a ghost, Izzy, he said, his voice low and intense. He held up a file. It was Maya Torres's. I went through her laptop. She was an urban explorer. She blogged about it. Her last few posts were all about the legend of the ghost engine. She wrote that she was hearing whispers, that something was calling her down there. She thought she was going to uncover some great historical secret. He tossed the file on the table. His hands were shaking. She drew this in the margins of her journal. Rossi looked down. It was a crudely drawn bluebird. Her professional skepticism finally cracked. Her face went slack, the color draining from it. No. She must have seen the one in the train and copied it. Or Miles said, leaning in, the train showed it to her. It learned it from Sarah, and it used it to lure Maya in just like it's trying to use it on me. The whisper chose that moment to return. Not in a tunnel, but right there, in the sterile, fluorescent-lit bullpen of the first precinct. Milo, help me, it's so cold. Miles flinched as if struck. He pressed the palms of his hands against his ears. You heard that, right? He pleaded with Rossi. She just stared at him, her expression a heartbreaking mix of fear and pity. Miles, there was nothing. He knew then he was alone in this. The train had latched onto him, and it was isolating him, making him look crazy. It was a tactic, a way to break him down before the final hunt. He had to go back. He had to face it. Alone. That night he gathered his gear. His service weapon felt useless, but he took it anyway. A heavy-duty maglite, a crowbar, and one last thing, a small, worn photograph of Sarah from his wallet. She was 9 in the picture, a gap-toothed smile and the same blue eyes as him. He tucked it into his jacket pocket. He didn't take the patrol car. He took the subway, a silent passenger among the late-night travelers. He got off at City Hall and slipped through a maintenance gate, descending once more into the suffocating silence of the abandoned tunnels. The platform was just as he'd left it, but the air felt colder, more charged. The ghost engine sat waiting for him at the end of the track, a predator in its lair. It looked darker than before, as if it were absorbing the very light around it. He walked the length of the platform, his boots echoing with a grim purpose. He didn't hesitate this time. He hoisted himself into the open doorway. I'm here, he said, his voice loud in the dead air. You want me? Come and get me. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the whisper began. It was all around him now, a chorus of voices, the spirits of everyone the train had consumed. They spoke of fear and loss, of being forgotten. And weaving through them all was Sarah's voice, crying his name. Milo, I'm scared. Don't leave me again. It's a lie. It's not her. Sarah is gone. This is just a monster wearing her voice like a mask. Don't listen. Don't let it feed you your own pain. He pushed forward, moving down the length of the car toward the motorman's cab. You can't have me, he grunted, the words a mantra. I'm not on the menu tonight. The lights flickered again, but this time they stayed on, casting the car in that same sickly, buzzing yellow glow. The graffiti on the walls began to move. The painted eyes blinked. The spray-painted mouths opened in silent screams. He saw the bluebird on the wall of the cab flap its wings once, a jerky, unnatural movement. The train groaned, and this time it was accompanied by the screech of metal on metal. The car lurched violently, throwing him against the wall. It felt like it was moving, picking up speed, though he knew they were on a dead-end track. The illusion was powerful, overwhelming. The windows, once black, now showed a blur of tunnel lights rushing past, a phantom journey into hell. He stumbled into the motorman's cab. The air was freezing, and the sweet smell was so thick it made him gag. And there, standing by the control panel, was a little girl. She was translucent, shimmering like a heat haze, but it was her. Sarah. Her dress was torn, her face pale and smudged with dirt. Her blue eyes were wide with fear. Milo, she whispered, her voice real, tangible, heartbreaking. You came back for me. His resolve shattered. Every rational thought evaporated, replaced by a wave of grief and love and guilt so powerful it brought him to his knees. Sarah, he cried, tears streaming down his face. I'm so sorry. I never stopped looking for you. The girl smiled, a sad, broken thing. I know, but I'm tired of being alone. Stay with me, Milo. We can be together. Forever. She reached out a shimmering hand. He could feel the cold radiating from it. This was it. The final trap. It was offering him the one thing he wanted more than anything in the world. An end to the pain. An end to the guilt. He reached for her hand. His fingers were inches away from her ghostly skin, and then his hand brushed against the pocket of his jacket. He felt the sharp corner of the photograph inside. The real Sarah. The smiling, happy girl, not this sad, spectral Law. The illusion flickered. For a split second, the girl's face contorted, the blue eyes burning with a cold, black hunger. The mouth stretched into a silent, cavernous scream. It wasn't Sarah. It was a puppet. He snatched his hand back. No, he said, his voice shaking but firm. He pulled the photograph from his pocket, holding it up like a shield. You're not her. You're just a parasite that's been feeding on her memory. The apparition shrieked, a sound that was both a little girl's cry and the grinding of rusted metal. The image of Sarah dissolved, replaced by a swirling vortex of screaming faces. Maya Torres, the transit worker, the college kids, all trapped within the entity's grasp. My sister is gone, Miles said, getting to his feet, the tears still on his face but his eyes hard as flint. I accept that. I'm letting her go, which means you have nothing left to feed on. You have no more power over me. The train screamed. The lights exploded in a shower of sparks. The entire car shook with a violent rage, trying to throw him from his feet. The windows shattered inwards. The whispers became a deafening roar of fury and pain. Miles stood his ground, clutching the photograph. He closed his eyes and focused on the real memory of his sister, her laughter, the way she smelled of sunshine and crayons. He let the grief wash through him, not as a weapon to be used against him, but as a final, loving farewell. The psychic assault stopped. When he opened his eyes, the cab was dark and silent. The phantom sensation of movement was gone. The cold had receded. The only sounds were his own ragged breathing and the steady plink-plank-plonk of water dripping somewhere far down the tunnel. He was alone. He turned and walked out of the cab, out of the train, and didn't look back. As he reached the stairs leading up to the station, he heard a new sound from behind him. A low, mournful groan, like a dying beast. And then a colossal, echoing crash as something immense and heavy collapsed in the darkness. He didn't need to see it to know. The ghost engine was finally, truly, dead. Months passed. The official report cited an unexpected structural failure of the abandoned subway car. They sealed the tunnel for good, burying car 7R50 under a wall of concrete. Miles Corbin took a long overdue leave of absence. He visited Sarah's empty grave for the first time in years, and for the first time he felt a sense of peace. He had faced her ghost and his own, and survived. But New York City has a long memory, and its darkness runs deep. One rainy Tuesday night, a year later, a young graffiti artist looking for a fresh, untouched wall pried open a manhole cover and descended into a section of the subway system that had been sealed since the 1940s. He moved through the silent, dripping dark, his flashlight beam dancing ahead of him. At the end of a long, debris-strewn tunnel, he found it. A single, pristine, mint-condition green subway car. It had no rust, no grime, and most importantly, no graffiti. It was a perfect blank canvas. As he popped the cap on his first can of spray paint, he failed to notice the faint, almost invisible scratches on the car's door. Fear the whispers. He didn't feel the temperature drop. And he didn't hear the sound that was not quite a sound, the barest hint of a whisper, coiling in the back of his mind, learning his name and asking him what he feared the most.